Matthew 27, verse 45. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land unto the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Some of them that stood there, when they heard that, said, This man calleth for Elias. And straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink. The rest said, Let it be. Let us see whether Elias will come to save him. Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. Our Father, again, we just ask, as we looked at those very solemn words, that you would help us to receive them afresh, that we would remember the immense suffering that you encountered. On that day, the Son encountered massive physical pain, and then the Father and the Spirit experiencing just tremendous grief as the humanity that you created would commit such an atrocity. We ask your Spirit that you would let that sink into our hearing. In Jesus' name, amen. Around the 6th hour, it says that there was darkness over all the land. The presence of God at this very hour was mind-altering. The things that were taking place were affecting the minds of every human being that was living on the planet. And it says that it began about the 6th hour. That it says, around this hour there was darkness over all the land. So every human eye that was alive went dim. There was limited light intake into every eye that was open all over the globe. Because of that, every eye, every man's sight became less vivid as darkness descended. It was limited. It was a lessened actual nerve activity. We know scientifically that the eyeball doesn't actually do the seeing, that the eyeball is filled with a lens, and that the lens captures the lights that are coming from them, that are reflecting off of things that we see, and through the light travels into the lenses of the eyeball and then through the retina, and then somehow through an optic nerve, the light in those things transfer into electric through this nerve, and somehow through the brain travels all the way near to the back, and it creates an electric stimulation to the brain. Of course, we know that even before there, it's upside down. So somewhere in that process, the things that are captured through the eyeball, God has turned it upside right, turned it into electric, sends it through a nerve, sends it all the way through the back of the brain, and then it is received as sight. So the electric stimulation to the brain then causes thought, and we perceive the things that we see. All of creation, starting at the 6th hour, all of life would slow slightly, all of life slightly would decrease in activity at the presence of God at about what is about to take place. All of life, all the electric of every human body slows just a little at the 6th hour. About the 9th hour, 3 hours later of this dimness, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Of course, it's misunderstood, like always. Some of them that stood there when they heard that said that he's calling for Elijah, the prophet. One of them is moved to take vinegar on a sponge, and they filled it, and they put it on a reed and gave him to drink. It was his dying hour, and that's all that the best that man could do. An immense suffering. That was the best that anyone could do. Some of the others wouldn't even do that. They said, no, don't even do that. Verse 49, the rest said, let us see whether Elias will come to save him. And in verse 50, we have a very anatomical event that took place, because it says Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, it says, yielded up the ghost. Now, this is not usual for crucifixion. Usual crucifixion, the brain function ceases because of a due lack of oxygen. So a normal death of a crucifixion, the criminal, would die by suffocation. Slowly, as they're crucified, they would have to lift themselves up so that the diaphragm would open and allow air into the lungs. And eventually, under such excruciating pain and suffering, eventually the criminal would give up. They physically cannot push themselves up anymore through the nails through the feet. And by hanging, they give up and they suffocate to death. So the brain function then would cease from working because of the lack of air, the lack of oxygen. And the electric then would stop. In this particular case, we know that Jesus said, no man takes my life from me. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it again. So in this situation, he doesn't die from suffocation as the normal. He dies by a sovereign act. He just on his own, in his brain and in his mind, flips a switch, and the electric is turned off. That's why the word that they use in the Authorized Version is yield. He yielded up the ghost. It wasn't taken from him. He did it on his own power. He yielded up the ghost. What we see there is the human faculty, the mind of the flesh, of the body and the sinew of the Son of Man. In his humility, he yields it up. Then notice, simultaneously, as he does this, verse 50, says, Jesus, when he had cried again and yielded up the ghost with a loud voice, he yields that up, and behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. Now, we know what that signifies. The veil was a shield or a guard. It was blocking from the Holy of Holies in the temple. It was blocking so that the Shekinah glory, where God would meet with his people within the temple, there was a very, very thick, woven, fancy, twined linen was hanging there. And at the same moment that God sovereignly slaps the electric off in his Son, or he does it himself, at the very same time, the veil is rent. What we see there is the human faculty working in the presence of Almighty God in the dimness of the day changes something. Now, what I'd like to do is that now that we see some of the human faculty, is to go to the book of Revelation, and we see a divine faculty illustrated for us, mixed with human faculties. In Revelation 14, John is seeing things, and things are being revealed to him of the future, of course. 14:1 says, I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 having his Father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven and look how he describes this voice from heaven, as many waters. and as the voice of a great thunder. So the hearing now is taking place. The human faculty is mixing with divine. So the divinity is speaking, and it says that the sound of that speech is as waters that are coming, and its sound is traveling in different levels of hertz or megahertz, and the vibrations are coming down all the way into every human being that is there, into the cochlea of their ear. Now again, just as the eyeball doesn't see, the ears don't hear either. They're receivers. They're receiving vibrations, and these vibrations come through, and we know that they hit the eardrum, and then it goes over to the cochlea, and somehow, some way, there's a fluid inside your ear that sorts and converts the reverberation. And actually, doctors don't understand this because we're fearfully and wonderfully made. But somehow, some way, the vibrations and the reverberations of sound enter into the cochlea, into this area where there is some kind of liquid, and it's converted and sorted into electronic pulses, which then enters into the nerve, which then enters into the brain. So that the brain then perceives the electric and all that took place prior in a second, and you have hearing. It's interesting, though, through all the miracle that just took place, that it's described that the voice from heaven is waters. Well, that's an interesting choice that God, the way that the divinity, the divine faculty would speak, is in the sound of waters. And think of how the water stimulates the mind. You can sit beside something, and some of you may even have an app on your phone where it's just calm waters, and you can fall asleep to water. Or you can go to the sound of rushing waters like the Niagara Fall, and it's this massive power of a thrusting, rushing waters, almost frightening, yet it's still waters. But when you're going through that, sometimes it affects you so much that you can get the hairs on the back of your head start to stand up. And your mind is altered by what has happened through these holes in the sides of our head. When I was a little boy, I would work in the body shop, and I learned how to harmonize by way of power tools in a body shop. So I could sing, and no one would hear me because the tools are so loud that I could sing in my mind and then change the pitch within me that's not leaving because I'm humming and nobody can hear it but me. Inside my mind, I am harmonizing with sanders and with different power tools. Why do you think that's funny? That's not funny. Now you know there's a little bit of weirdness happening here. But when God speaks, at the presence of God, just at his voice, it's mind-altering. It can be soothing and tranquil, or roaring and frightening. Either way, though, you're affected. And then look, he goes on concerning into the hearing of the people. It says, and I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters and as the voice of a great thunder. So again, a shocking thing that enters into those holes. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. Isn't that interesting that he doesn't say the music of harpers? But he describes it as the voice of harpers. Because the people who are playing the harp are actually making the instrument sing. It's not just off music, there's a voice to it. God has designed all the things of the earth with music and all the keys of the piano, which is basically a large harp. He's made that for that you can make the instrument sing because it feeds our soul and it affects our emotion, and the presence between the divinity that these people that are in together and all of us as one big choir is God's Spirit-filled speaking, singing, even through a harp. And he does this to strike our emotions because we know how many times have we sat there and listened to a song and bald. And you don't want anyone to even see you. You're in the car by yourself. The windows are up. The music's full blast. And literally, you got tears coming down. That's the divine presence of God through his creation. And he describes it as these harpers are singing with their harps. And look, it says, and these 144,000 in particular during the trib, they sing this song. It's a new song. Why? Because we know sometimes you can have a fantastic song, and after a while it grows a little stale. Still a great song. It's the same notes, it's the same lyrics, but emotionally, not the same. So for here, God is putting a new song that is fantastic, absolutely mind-altering. And it says they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but these 144,000 which were redeemed. It's only for redeemed people. The sound is for our edification and for our pleasure. Live music. I sat listening to the Cleveland Orchestra play Christmas music. Unbelievable. We've been there. All of us have heard these things, and it takes place. And you get, and eventually, if it's not tears, you get chills up your spine, the hairs on your head. You have goosebumps on your skin, all because of fantastic orchestral music. And I sat there and thinking to myself, I don't know how many of these Cleveland Orchestra players are actually believers or not. And so I'm communing with God by myself, saying, God, are you enjoying this? I'm enjoying it, but are you enjoying it? Because really, it's about the heart of every person who's playing and every person who's singing. Is their heart communing with yours like mine is? Because if it's not, you don't like it. And I feel so bad for them because they're blind. They never experienced anything like that. That's the point. Only these 444,000, only they could learn it. Everybody else, it's just noise. That is the divine part, but then I want to take us back to a place in Exodus where we see the desire, because the problem is it's individual. So again, I looked out today during the songs, and some of you are singing and some of you aren't. Some of you shouldn't be singing, and that's okay. That's fine, because be courteous to your neighbor and keep your mouth shut. But some of you really, can sing so well and so loud that you don't realize that 3 rows away from you, you're blessing those people. God is using you to bless people 3 rows away because of your singing in your heart. Even if you don't sing well, if your heart is right, God is glorified. But why do some people not have that desire? Like, why do some people lose the desire and some people have it and some people don't? What? We find something peculiar happen in Exodus right after, in Exodus 33. Moses is going through something here because he's already been up on the mount, so he's experienced something fantastic. If anything is mind-altering, it would be Moses on the mount with lightning and fire. The mountain's on fire. It is absolutely dangerous, frightening. He has to have post-traumatic stress disorder if anybody has it. He's been in the presence of God in a mind-altering event, which is like a drug. Now, I'm careful when I use that illustration because I'm not glorifying drug use. But drugs bring to some people, especially at first, an immense joy. It's a mind-altering substance. It can bring laughter. I remember when I was a young kid, I was sampling drugs, and when I was done, about 3 hours later, I was doing this. Because my cheekbones were sore because I hadn't stopped smiling in 3 hours. I was giggling with my friends. We were just young kids, and this was happening. That's a counterfeit. That's the devil's counterfeit. That's the lure that will catch you and then ruin you. Because he is the counterfeiter of God, and God has a mind-altering way too that is better than that. Better. One day, our cheekbones, brothers and sisters, will be sore from smiling. Moses has experienced this, and then look what happens we can jump down in verse 12 of Exodus 33. Moses said unto the Lord, and look, and you know he's got to be a little apprehensive. He just came off the mountain. He goes, see, God, thou sayest unto me, bring up this people. And thou hast not let me know whom thou wilt send with me. You're telling me to do something, but you haven't told me who you're going to bring with me. I think that by then it's pretty much a moot question. Like, that's not really a valid question. And I don't think that's really what it's about. You ever beat around the bush when you're talking to somebody and you have something that you want to address, but you're really uncomfortable addressing it, so, let's just kind of beat around the bush a little bit and like, God, well, you told me, this, but you really haven't told me who's coming with me. That's not what it's about. Look at verse 13. He starts to ease into it. Now, therefore, I pray thee, if I have found grace in thy sight, show me now thy way. And of course, Jesus' words in John 14 are screaming at us, I am the way. But Moses says, God, show me now thy way, that I may know thee. See how the previous question is relatively moot now? This is really what's on his mind. That I may find grace in thy sight and consider that this nation is thy people. God responds to him in a peculiar way because God knows the thoughts of Moses. He said, my presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. It's rest of the mind, tranquility. It's like listening to the sound of water. He said unto him, if thy presence go not with me, carry us not up hence. And then I think it's kind of, like I got a second question, but I'm trying not to be, presumptuous here, because I could get killed at any moment. Verse 16, for wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Well, I would think the Exodus would have been a big clue. Is it not that thou goest with us? Shall we be separated, I and thy people, from all the people that are upon the face of the earth? He's asking kind of like, he's beating around the bush, and you can hear God saying to him, you got something on your mind, Moses? You got something on your mind? Well, yeah, actually I do. The follow-up question. Verse 18. He said, I beseech thee, show me thy glory. As this is where the drug addict is longing and jonesing for more. Show me thy glory. He wants a mass intake, a massive dose, a mind-altering connection. I want to see thy glory. He said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee. Do you see how God is answering questions that Moses, he doesn't even know how to ask the question, but he wants, show me thy glory. And God says, I'll show you my goodness pass before thee. I will proclaim the name of the Lord before thee. There will be a revelation to him and his goodness. And by saying the proclaiming the name of the Lord, it's who I am, because his name represents his personality and his personhood. And look what he says too. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy upon whom I will show mercy. And somebody will immediately say, well, that sounds Pauline, doesn't it? Romans chapter 9. You see, the New Testament and the Old Testament are always clumped together. That's why we're students of both. Because he just received a massive dose of theology. He's sitting like in seminary school just for this one verse, show me thy glory. And God says, well, let's jump into seminary for a minute. And he said, you cannot see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. His request is a lethal dose. Because what would happen, and how would that happen, is at the sight of God's face, in the very presence of unveiled God, the electric in your body through the hearing and through the eyes and through the optic nerve, the transformation of the blasting, brilliant light of God would transform into electric current, which travels through the optic nerve into the brain and would overwhelm the system, and you would be dead in a minute. No man can look at my face and live. Cardiac arrest, neurological failure would immediately happen at the presence of God. Verse 21, the Lord said, behold, there is a place by me, right by me, and thou shalt stand upon a rock. And it shall come to pass, while my glory passes by, that I will put thee in a cleft of a rock, and will cover thee. I will shield thee. I will veil thee in the cleft. I will cover thee with my hand while I pass by, and I will take away my hand, and thou shalt see my back parts. Brothers, the only hand that God has is the hand of Jesus Christ. The only back parts that can see, because God is spirit. But the Son of God, he's looking at. I will shield you with my hand, the hand of Jesus Christ himself, pre-incarnate before Bethlehem, and I will block you. I will veil your sight. I will save you and shield you. And then as I'm passing by, I will just leave my hand just so that you get a glimpse of the back parts of Jesus Christ. But thou shalt not see my face. My face shall not be seen. When Christ died, the veil was torn. And when he returns, the book of Revelation is the apocalyptos. It is the unveiling. When the presence of God returns to the earth, and instead of seeing the face of God and being slaughtered in a minute, our bodies will receive electric power to our cardiac system and our visual system and our hearing system, and all the five senses that he has created for us will be equipped to absorb such massive presence of God, and the bliss and the joy will overwhelm us just at the presence of his being. That is the same person that was crucified on Calvary. And that is the person and the broken body and the blood that we are about to celebrate here at the Lord's table.